The great viewing chamber of the Galactic Assembly was a symphony of whispered light and shifting forms. Delegates from 100 species floated or perched, their attention focused on the central hologram. It displayed a blue-green world, wreathed in primitive satellite webs and scarred by the obvious marks of industrial immaturity. This was Earth, the petitioner, the human representative. A man named Ambassador Choi spoke with a voice that trembled with what everyone assumed was fear. He spoke of resource pirates, of raids on their outer colonies, of a unified Earth government pleading for protection. The play was met with a wave of dismissive pity. The Tralaxians, with their crystalline bodies, chimed softly about the natural order. The hulking Gron, whose skin was like volcanic rock, grunted about the necessity of strength. No one offered help. From a private balcony, Overseer Taliner of the Vexler Dominion watched, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. To him, Earth was not a tragedy. It was an opportunity. His empire fed on weak systems. While other civilizations presented daunting profiles, the energy shields of the Call, the plasma fleets of the Centauri Earth's dossier, was laughable. They had just begun to explore their own solar system. Their greatest weapons were kinetic projectiles and fission bombs, relics of their own violent nature. They were divided, noisy, and utterly, transparently soft. A perfect first strike, his aide, a slender Vexler named Crix, hissed. Their defenses are sparse. Their unity is a thin paper over deep cracks. We will take their asteroid belt, their lunar bases, and then the planet itself. The Assembly will not intervene. They see no value here. Taliner nodded. Proceed. Let the Chitin's fury make the initial assessment. Show the galaxy what happens to those who bring their weaknesses into the light. Light years away, on the surface of that blue-green world, life moved to a different rhythm. In a nondescript facility buried deep within the Taebaek Mountains of South Korea, the air was cool and carried a faint hum of machinery. The room was not grand. It looked more like a university lab than a galactic command center. Banks of monitors showed star charts, gravitational wave readings, and streams of complex data. 2 technicians worked the evening shift. Min, a man with tired eyes and a comfortable sweater, sipped from a mug of lukewarm coffee. Hannah, her dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail, leaned forward in her chair, her fingers dancing across a keyboard. On their main screen, a new alert blinked. A schematic of the solar system appeared, highlighting 2 crimson dots skirting the orbit of Neptune. Vexler scout ships, signatures clear as day to their sensors. They're here earlier than projected, Min said, his voice calm. He zoomed in on the data. Standard probing pattern, looking for military patrols, monitoring communications. Hannah didn't look up from her console. They won't find any. Not the kind they're looking for. She pulled up another window, a cascade of quantum probability waveforms that made no sense to a conventional eye. The field is quiet. Non-local sensors report 0 coalescence. They're seeing exactly what we want them to see. Min let out a long breath, not of fear, but of weary inevitability. They always do. They look at the surface. They see the news feeds, the political arguments, the old radiation from past wars. They think the noise is all there is. On a secondary monitor, a live feed from a galactic news network played silently. A sleek, insect-like Vexler analyst was discussing Earth. The subtitles read, "A case study in failed evolution. A species trapped by its own biology and petty squabbles. A drain on assembly resources." Hannah finally glanced at it and allowed a small, cold smile to touch her lips. "The oldest predators in our own history," she said, echoing their training, "were the ones who looked most harmless. The stonefish, the octopus. They let others see only what ensures their survival." A soft chime sounded. A new data packet arrived, flagged from the Gobi Deep facility. Hannah opened it. It was a predictive model, showing the probable path of a Wechsler incursion. The lines converged on Earth, on the Korean peninsula. They'll hit a population center first, Min observed, tracing the line with his finger. A show of force. Probably Seoul. Try to break our will before they even land. Standard Dominion doctrine, Hannah agreed. She began compiling her report, her movements efficient, practiced. There was no panic in the room. No racing hearts or shouted orders. Only the profound, deep stillness of those who have rehearsed for a disaster they know will not come. The response matrix is already preloaded for that scenario. The field will localize. Probability of collateral damage is 0.001%. She finished her entry and looked at Min. The readiness report is complete for Captain Park. Level 1. Observational status is confirmed. Should I mark it for his morning review? Min checked the time. No. Send it now. He'll want to know they've crossed the threshold. He leaned back, staring at the crimson dots on the screen. You know, part of me pities them. Don't, Anna said, her voice gentle but firm. She finally turned away from the screens to look at him. They have a choice. They choose conquest. We didn't lay this trap. We just found the signs that said, do not touch, and decided to believe them. Outside the mountain, the world was unaware. In Seoul, neon lights painted the night, trains hummed through tunnels, and people lived their lives. Governments across the planet were, as Min and Hannah knew, in a state of controlled frenzy. Emergency sessions, military alerts, frantic calls to alien contacts who had gone silent. The surface noise was deafening. It was the perfect camouflage dot in their quiet room. They were the watchers of the deep, the listeners at the door of a very old, very quiet house. They monitored the heartbeat of something far greater than any human creation. It slept, but its reflexes were awake. Hannah sent the report. A moment later, her console chimed with an acknowledgement from Captain Park. It contained only 2 words. Proceed as guided. She looked at the main viewer. The 2 Wechsler scouts had finished their loop and were powering up their warp drives, likely heading back to the main fleet with the good news. Earth was undefended. A ripe fruit ready to fall. They're leaving, she said. Min took a final sip of his coffee. It had gone cold. Let them tell their story, he murmured, almost to himself. Let them bring their fury. They'll learn the hardest lesson the universe has to teach. He powered down his secondary station, the routine gesture a stark contrast to the galactic storm that was brewing. The mountain facility, like the planet it was buried in, waited. Not with weapons raised, but with the patience of geology, the silence of deep space, and the terrible, awesome knowledge of a child who has found the forgotten control panel for a star. The command bridge of the Chitin's Fury was a place of sharp angles and pale green light. Commander Crix stood at the central platform, his exoskeleton clicking with satisfaction as he watched the planet grow larger on the main viewer. The scout reports had been flawless. Earth's orbital space was a cluttered junkyard of primitive satellites in a few rusting orbital stations. No energy signatures. No fleet movements. The planet's communications were a chaotic babble of panic and disorganized military chatter. It was perfect. Target the primary population center on the peninsula, Crix ordered, his voice a dry rasp. Seoul, a single burst from the primary plasma lance. Let them see their own fire from the sky. Let their will break before a single soldier lands. On the surface, in the mountain facility, Min watched the larger, angrier red dot of the battleship separate from the Wechsler fleet and move into attack position. A soft, pulsing tone filled the room. Hannah's fingers moved to a different console, one with a simpler, older-looking interface. It's beginning, she said, her voice flat. In cities across Earth. Air raid sirens began to wail, a sound many thought forgotten. People looked up, confused and terrified. Galactic news drones, positioned to record the lesson, zoomed in on the streets of Seoul, capturing the fear on human faces. The narrative was being written. The fall of a weak world. The Titan's fury hummed with power. Deep in its core, the plasma lance charged, drawing energy from the ship's mighty reactors. A blinding sphere of white-hot energy coalesced at the ship's bow. "Fire," said Commander Crix, a lance of pure destruction, capable of vaporizing a mountain, screamed down through the atmosphere. It tore through the sky, a spear of man-made lightning aimed at the heart of the city. The galactic feed showed it all, a silent, terrible streak of light dot in the mountain facility. A single line of text flashed on Hana's simple console. Localized incursion detected. Kinetics, extreme. Intent, lethal. Implementing safeguard. On the streets of Seoul, people screamed and braced for the end. The plasma beam struck something 200 kilometers above the city. It was not an explosion. It was a silent, beautiful, and impossible shattering. Where the beam hit, space itself seemed to ripple like water. A pattern of glowing hexagonal lines, faint as a ghost, flickered into existence for less than a second. The deadly plasma did not explode downward. It splintered like light through a prism, into a million harmless strands of fading light that dissipated into the upper atmosphere. The silence that followed was profound. On the bridge of the Titan's fury, the only sound was the low hum of the ship's systems. Commander Crix stared at the viewer. The city below was untouched. Lights still twinkled. Cars still moved. His tactical screen showed the energy discharge had been 100%, and the result was 0. "Explain," he hissed, his clicking exoskeleton now tight with alarm. "Sensors detected no shield, Commander," a technician stammered. "No energy absorption, no deflection field. The energy, it just came apart. The readings make no physical sense." Crix felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. It was a fluke, a localized atmospheric anomaly. Target the city again, and prepare the ground assault shuttles. We will land and take it by hand. Below, in the Taebaek facility, Min watched the data stream. He's going to try again, and send the shuttles. He thinks it's a trick. Hana nodded. The field isn't a barrier. It's a response. He's poking a beehive with a stick. The Titan's fury fired again. This time, 3 rapid pulses of plasma, targeting different districts of the city. The same result. 3 silent, breathtaking displays of hexagonal light, and the energy vanished into harmless glitter. At the same moment, the launch bays of the battleship opened. 10 assault shuttles, shaped like angry wasps, shot out and began their roaring descent towards the outskirts of Seoul. The galactic news feeds were in chaos. The narrative of a quick conquest had vanished. Now it was a mystery. Commentators babbled about hidden technology, about human deception. The shuttles hit the atmosphere, their hulls glowing red with heat. They were 5 minutes from landing. In the Gobi Desert facility, a technician named Jun watched a different kind of screen. It showed the world not as a map, but as a living tapestry of quantum states. The assault shuttles were like angry red tears in the fabric. He spoke into his headset. "Pattern is confirmed. Directed aggression vectors. Non-local response is authorized. Initiating." On Hana's console in the mountains, new text appeared. Secondary protocol engaged. Applying corrective coherence. The lead Vexler shuttle was 30 kilometers up when its pilot suddenly found his controls did nothing. The engines were at full power. The systems were green, but the shuttle was no longer falling. It was hanging in the air, suspended. Then it began to change. The sleek metal hull started to blur. It lost its sharpness, its color, its solidity. To the watching cameras, it looked like the shuttle was dissolving into sand, but the sand then seemed to blow away on a wind that wasn't there. In less than 10 seconds, the shuttle was gone. No explosion. No debris. Just gone. The second shuttle veered wildly, trying to avoid the same fate. It made it another kilometer before the very air around it seemed to thicken. The shuttle slowed, then stopped, trapped in a sphere of shimmering, glass-like air. Inside, the crew watched in horror as the outside world became a frozen picture. Then, the sphere collapsed in on itself with a sound like a sigh, and there was nothing left. The third shuttle experienced time differently. For the crew, everything outside their viewports became a blinding streak of light. Their bodies aged centuries in an instant, turning to dust within their flight suits. The shuttle itself, now a tomb of fine powder, continued its descent for a second, before crumbling into a cloud that drifted on the wind. The remaining 7 shuttles broke formation, scrambling in panic. But for each one, the outcome was the same, only the method changed. One unraveled into its component wires and plates. Another simply ceased to exist in a flash of gentle light. They were not destroyed by weapons. They were corrected, erased from the scene by a hand that seemed to find their violent intrusion offensive to reality itself. On the Chitin's Fury, Commander Crix was shouting, demanding answers that no one could give. His sensors were useless. They showed no beam, no missile, no energy source. His ships were just undone. Pull back. He finally roared. Get us into high orbit, now. The great battleship began to turn, its engines flaring. In the mountain facility, Min watched it go. He looked at Hana. They're retreating. Hana was looking at her quantum waveform screen. The angry red tears in the tapestry were gone, smoothed over as if they had never been. But the fabric itself was still disturbed. A deep, resonant vibration had been triggered. They woke it up, she said softly. And now it's looking at them. The retreat won't matter. On the galactic feeds, the images were playing on a loop. The silent hexagons, the vanishing shuttles. The pity in the assembly was gone, replaced by a dawning, chilling confusion. Overseer Taliner, watching from his balcony, felt his confidence shatter. This was no hidden shield. This was something else. Something old. On the streets of Seoul, people were still looking up, but now their fear was mixed with wonder. They had seen the fire from the sky turn to rainbows. They had seen the alien shuttles disappear like bad dreams. They didn't understand, but a strange, wild hope began to beat in their chests. In the quiet of the mountain, Min received a direct message from Captain Park. It read, Phase 1 complete. The lesson has been delivered. Stand by for Phase 2. They have not yet learned to listen. Hana leaned back, finally taking a deep breath. The screen in front of her, which had shown the simple words implementing safeguard, now returned to its quiet, ready state. Outside, the sky over Korea was clear and calm, as if nothing had happened at all. The silence on the bridge of the Chitin's Fury was heavy and cold. Commander Crix stared at the main viewer, which now showed a perfect, untroubled image of Earth. The blue planet hung in the blackness, peaceful and mocking. His mind replayed the last few minutes on a loop, the plasma lance hitting nothing, the shuttles dissolving into mist and memory. His ship's sensors had recorded everything, yet understood nothing. There were no energy spikes, no shield frequencies, no weapon signatures. It was as if the laws of physics had simply decided to reject the Vexler Dominion. Report, he finally said, his voice a dry scrape. The science officer, a young Vexler named Vel, trembled as he spoke. Commander, the scans show nothing. The energy from our weapons did not dissipate. It was transformed. The matter of the shuttles was not destroyed. It was unmade. The quantum state of the local area experienced a forced coherence event. It is not a technology we recognize. It is not a technology at all. It is like the universe itself, corrected an error. Crix felt a primal fear, one his species had not known in millennia of conquest. But fear quickly boiled into rage. To be humiliated by these primitives in front of the entire galactic assembly feed? It was unthinkable. An error? He snarled. We are the Vexler Dominion. We do not make errors. This is a trick. A hidden planetary defense, cleverly masked. They are weak. Look at them. He gestured violently at the secondary screens, showing the chaotic human news broadcasts. Dispatch the rest of the fleet, Crix ordered, his decision solidifying into grim resolve. All ships. Full bombardment pattern. Target every major population center on the planet. Let us see if their invisible shield can be everywhere at once. The order went out. From behind the moon, the main Vexler invasion force moved. 20 battleships, shaped like arrowheads, slid into position. 100 smaller attack vessels fanned out behind them. To any normal world, it was an overwhelming, apocalyptic force. In the mountain facility, the soft, pulsing tone became a steady, urgent hum. Min's screen flooded with crimson icons. He didn't learn, Min said, a note of sadness in his voice. He's committing his entire fleet. Hana was already at the quantum console. Her screen was a sea of calming blues and greens, but now piercing red vortices were forming all over the display, each representing a targeting solution from the Vexler fleet. The field is non-local, she said, as if reminding herself of a basic fact. It doesn't need to be everywhere. It just is. Initiating systemic response. On Earth, panic reached a fever pitch. People huddled in shelters, stared at skies, waiting for the end. The galactic assembly feeds were now the most watched channels on the planet, a grotesque spectacle of their own potential annihilation. The Vexler fleet fired as one. A storm of death rained down. Plasma lances, kinetic rods, gamma burst projectors, every weapon in their arsenal sent its fury towards the cities of Earth. It was a display of power meant to crack a continent. And then the sky began to dance. Over Beijing, a torrent of plasma became a silent, expanding flower of amber light that faded like a firework. Over New York, kinetic rods intended to smash the city to dust slowed, stopped, and then gently floated downward, landing in the harbor with small, harmless splashes. Over Paris, a gamma burst shimmered against an invisible, rippling curtain and scattered into a harmless aurora that painted the dawn sky with impossible colors. Each attack was met not with a single giant shield, but with a localized, perfectly tailored response. It was not a defense. It was a negation, but the system was no longer just defending. It was now actively analyzing the threat. On the bridge of the Chiton's fury, Crix watched his grand assault turn into a light show. No, he roared. Focus fire. A single point. The city below us. Pour everything into it. His ship, along with 3 others, obeyed. They directed all power to their primary weapons, aiming for the heart of Sol once more. The buildup of energy was immense, making the very hull of the ship vibrate. Before they could fire, the system responded to the heightened aggression. The Chiton's fury did not dissolve. Instead, a perfect silent sphere of darkness appeared around its main reactor core. Inside that sphere, time accelerated to an infinite degree. In a nanosecond, the reactor underwent millions of years of decay. It did not explode. It simply turned into a lump of cold, inert iron and dust. Every system on the ship powered down at once. Lights died. Engines faded. The ship was now a dead, cold shell drifting in orbit, On the other Vexler ships, the responses varied, each more bizarre and terrifying than the last. The battleship Ironwolf found its molecular bonds simply loosening. The ship, from prow to stern, began to separate into a cloud of its base elements metals, plastics, gases as if being disassembled by a giant, invisible hand. The crew floated into the vacuum, suits and all. Before they too came gently apart, the attack vessel's swift strike attempted to flee. As it engaged its warp drive, the fabric of space around it wrinkled. The ship did not jump to faster-than-light travel. It was folded. One moment it was there, the next it was a tiny, impossibly dense cube of compressed matter, smaller than a human fist, which then winked out of existence. Across the fleet, the story was the same. Ships that fired found their weapons turning against them, or their energy sources aging to dust, or their very structure unknitting. Ships that tried to run found space itself refusing their passage. It was a slaughter, but one without violence. It was a cleanup dot in the Gobi Desert facility. Jun watched the quantum tapestry. The angry red vortices were being smoothed away, one by one, each with a different corrective stitch applied by the system. Beside him, Yuna monitored the biological readings. No loss of human life, she reported, her voice soft with awe. Structural damage minimal. A few broken windows from sonic booms. The field, it's surgical. It removes the infection without harming the host. An alien observer, a slender botanist from a peaceful system named Kalin, who had been on Earth as a cultural exchange guest, was with him. She was trembling, her large eyes wide with horror at the view screens, showing the Vexler fleet being unmade. "What is this?" she whispered. "What have your people done?" Jun turned to her. He did not look triumphant. He looked like a student explaining a difficult lesson. "We haven't done anything, Colin. Not to them. We didn't build this. We found it. It was here long before us." He pointed to his main screen, which showed not ships, but a deep, resonant waveform emanating from Earth's core. They are not being fought. They are being rejected. Their aggression is a form of destructive chaos. The system enforces coherence. It restores balance. You cannot fight a law of nature. You can only break yourself against it. On the dead bridge of the Chiton's Fury, Commander Crix floated in the zero gravity, staring at the blank screens. His communication console flickered once, powered by a last bit of backup energy. A simple, clear message from the planet below appeared on the screen. It was not in human script, but in the universal base code of the galaxy, a language for machines and first contacts. It read, "Cease dot." It was not a plea. It was an instruction. Crix looked out the viewport at his dying fleet, at the beautiful, terrible planet below. For the first time, he saw it not as a weak blue dot, but as something else entirely. It looked like an eye, slowly opening. And he finally understood the fear. They had not attacked a planet. They had poked something asleep, something vast, and now it was looking back at him. He had no weapons left to fire, no engines to flee. All he could do was wait for whatever correction the eye decided to apply to his ship and to him. The silence was complete, and in it he heard the echo of his own hubris, a small, insignificant sound in the deep, listening quiet of the earth. The quiet that settled over Earth was deeper than any silence caused by fear. It was the quiet after a storm that had passed harmlessly overhead. People emerged from shelters, blinking in the sunlight, looking at skies empty of everything but clouds and birds. The alien fleet was gone, not defeated in battle, but erased. Videos of dissolving ships and silent, shimmering shields played on every screen, but no one had an explanation. The world held its breath in the mountain facility. The tension had not left Min and Hana. The immediate threat was over, but their work was now more critical than ever. A new priority alert chimed. It was from Captain Park. Recovery teams are mobilizing. The Vexler command ship is dead in orbit, but life signs are detected. We have a new directive. Secure their senior officer. The council wants a dialogue. Hannah looked at the data. The Chitin's Fury was a cold husk, but a section of its hull near the bridge still showed faint biological readings. They want us to bring one of them down? After what just happened? It's part of the lesson, Min said, pulling up a transport protocol. The system only reacts to aggression. A peaceful, unarmed retrieval mission won't trigger her response. We hope. Hours later, in a sterile, secure room deep beneath the United Nations complex in Geneva, the captured Vexler science officer sat on a simple chair. His name was Val. His exoskeleton was chipped, and one of his limbs was held stiffly. He was not bound. There was no need. He was surrounded not by soldiers, but by humans in plain uniforms, and by the immense psychological weight of what he had witnessed. Across from him sat Captain Jin, a calm man with a steady gaze. Next to Jin was Yuna, the technician from the Gobi facility, her tablet in her lap. You attacked our world, Jin began, his voice neutral. Why? Vel's clicking voice was weak, but defiance still tinged it. You were weak. You presented a target. It is the way of things. The strong take. The weak are taken. He shifted, his compound eyes taking in the bare room. But you are not weak. You have a weapon. A terrible hidden weapon. You deceived the assembly. Jin shook his head slowly. We have no weapon, Vel. Do not lie. Vel snapped, a flash of his old arrogance returning. I saw. The energy diffusion, the molecular disintegration, the temporal acceleration. That is technology beyond anything in the known galaxy. You have cloaked it, made it seem like magic, but it is a weapon. Yuna spoke then, her voice softer. What is the difference between a weapon and an immune system? Vel stared at her, confused. She turned her tablet around. On it was a simplified graphic of Earth, surrounded by a faint, shimmering network. If a virus enters your body, your white blood cells attack it. They dissolve it, break it apart. Is that a weapon? Or is it a function of life, protecting itself? This is not a body. It is a planet, Vel hissed. Is it? Jin asked. He nodded to YUNI. She changed the image. Now it showed deep geological scans. Layers of rock, and within them, at precise intervals all around the globe, strange, non-natural structures. Perfect spheres of unknown alloy, 10 miles beneath the crust. Channels of crystalline material running along tectonic plates. Then, archaeological images. Dinosaur fossils with impossible metallic implants fused to bone. Cave paintings from 100 different ancient cultures. All depicting the same thing, a shimmering net in the sky protecting Earth from falling stars. This has been here for a very, very long time, Jin said. We found the first clues a century ago. A mining drill bit melted when it hit one of those spheres. We spent generations learning. Not how to use it. We can't use it. We learned how to listen to it. How to understand its rules. Vel was silent, studying the images. The arrogance was bleeding away, replaced by a dawning, awful comprehension. The beings who built this, Yuna continued, they weren't building a fortress. They were building a school. Or a garden. They seeded life here, maybe everywhere. And they left a teaching aid. A system that guides a species away from certain destructive paths by making those paths impossible. It doesn't stop war between ourselves. It doesn't stop us from making mistakes. It only reacts to one thing, an external existential threat. A threat from outside the system. So, your weakness. Vel began, his voice barely a whisper. Was a choice, Jin finished. A deliberate one. Once we understood, we disbanded our orbital weapon platforms. We stopped researching planet-killer missiles. We knew that if we ever tried to turn this into a weapon, to project aggression outward, the system might see us as the infection. Our safety depends on our peaceful intent. Our greatest strategic decision was to appear defenseless. The scale of the truth crushed Vel. His entire worldview, the glory of conquest, the logic of strength, was meaningless. Humanity wasn't hiding a weapon. They were living inside a lesson. A lesson with terrifying consequences for those who failed it. You are saying, Vel said slowly, that to strike Earth is not to fight humans. It is to fight the gardeners? The makers of this? It is to fight the rules of the game they set up on this planet, Jin corrected. The system doesn't think. It reacts. Like a body rejecting a virus. You poured poison into the bloodstream. The body neutralized the poison. It wasn't personal. Vel thought of the iron will coming apart atom by atom. He thought of the swift strike being folded into nothing. It was the most personal thing he had ever experienced. What happens now? He asked, the fight gone from him. Now, Jin said, leaning forward, you help us send a message. You will tell your people and the assembly exactly what you have learned. You will tell them that Earth is under a protection not of our making. That the price of aggression here is not war, but erasure. And you will tell them that humanity wishes only to be left in peace, to continue our studies. And if they do not believe? If they send a larger fleet? Jin's expression was one of profound pity. Then they will learn the same lesson you did. Only the scale of the response will be larger. The system has been awakened. It is now attentive. We do not control what it does. We only observe. They gave Vel access to a communication console. With trembling limbs, he began to compose his report. He described not a hidden fleet, but a hidden truth. He described the fossils, the deep earth structures, the impossible defenses. He called it the custodial field, the planetary immune response. As he worked, Yuna showed him one last thing on her tablet. It was a live feed from the edge of the solar system. The few Vexler ships that had stayed behind as scouts were turning, fleeing at maximum speed. But as they entered warp, the space around them shimmered. They did not vanish into faster-than-light travel. They slowed, stopped, and were gently, firmly pushed back into normal space, like a hand pushing a toy boat back to shore. A clear, unmistakable message. You are not permitted to leave. The quarantine had begun. Vel finished his report and sent it on all galactic emergency channels. He then sat back, a broken creature. He had come as part of a conquering force. He was leading as a messenger, a warning from a power so far beyond his own that it viewed his entire empire as a minor nuisance. Captain Jin stood. The lesson is harsh, but it is the only one we have to give. You will be returned to the remains of your ship. A life pod will be made available to you. What happens after that is up to your people and to the system. As they led Vel away, Yuna looked at the captain. Do you think they'll listen? Jin watched the alien's retreating, defeated form. Some will. The smart ones. The others? He glanced at a screen showing the quiet blue curve of Earth. The teacher is very patient, and it has all the time in the world. The message from Earth did not travel through normal space. It rode on the back of the phenomenon that had defeated the Vexler. It was less a transmission and more a resonance, echoing through the quantum layers that connected the galaxy. Vel's report, his raw fear and shattered understanding, was the carrier wave. By the time it reached the galactic assembly, every species, from the crystalline Tralaxians to the volcanic Gron, felt it in their most sensitive instruments. It was a truth that could not be ignored. The assembly chamber was not silent now. It was a cacophony of panic, awe, and desperate analysis. The live feeds from Earth were replayed, the silent hexagons, the ships unraveling, the gentle, terrible push that barred the Vexler scouts from leaving the solar system. Overseer Taliner of the Vexler Dominion watched from his balcony, his body rigid with a horror that was no longer personal, but existential. His empire's might was rendered meaningless. They had not been defeated by a rival, but by a principle. On Earth, the sun rose and set on a changed world. The global fear had melted, replaced by a profound and unsettling wonder. People went back to work, to their lives, but now they looked at the sky with new eyes. It was not an empty space to be filled, nor a frontier to be conquered. It was the ceiling of a home they had just realized was far larger and far stranger than they had ever dreamed dot in the Taebaek Mountain facility. Min and Hana worked on a new task, monitoring the custodial field, as it was now being called, for signs of settling. The deep, resonant vibration that had answered the Vexler attack was slowly quieting, returning to its dormant, watchful state. But it was different now. It was awake in a way it hadn't been for millennia. It's like it remembers, Hana said, watching the quantum waveform display slowly pulse with a gentle, steady rhythm. It's re-established the perimeter. The solar system is now defined. Min nodded, looking at the clean star charts. All alien ships, not just the Vexler, had been gently ushered out to a boundary just beyond Pluto's orbit. A line had been drawn in the fabric of space itself. We're not just a preserve. We're a classroom with very strict rules. Captain Park's voice came over the comms. The Assembly has requested direct communication. They are asking for a spokesperson. A small, wry smile touched Min's lips. They want to talk to the teacher's pet. Soon, Captain Jin stood in a simple, clean room in Geneva. Before him was a holographic projector. With a soft chime, the images of the Galactic Assembly's Leadership Committee resolved in the air. There were no grand chambers now, no displays of power. Just the representatives, their forms humbled by the scale of what they had witnessed. The Trilaxian speaker began, its chimes translated into soft speech. People of Earth, we have seen. We have listened. We seek understanding. Jin bowed his head slightly. We all do. The Vexler report speaks of a protection not of your making, of gardeners, of a lesson. Is this truth? It is, Jin said. He kept his words simple, clear. We did not build the field. We discovered it. We are studying it. Its primary function is to protect the development of life on this planet from external annihilation. It defines annihilation very broadly and very powerfully. The ground representative, its voice a low rumble, spoke. You say you cannot control it, yet it protects you. This is a weapon of unimaginable power. You must share its secrets. Jin met the Grand's fiery gaze in the hologram. There are no secrets to share, only a warning to give. It is not a tool. It is a condition. If you try to approach it as a weapon, you will trigger it. The Vexler did not attack humanity. They attacked a fundamental rule of this planet. The rule defended itself. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Humanity's only secret is this. We chose to lay down our arms at the edge of space. We chose to stop being a threat to others, because we understood that to be a threat here, from inside the system, might be the greatest danger of all. Our weakness was our wisdom. The Assembly was silent, processing this. The most powerful defense in the known galaxy was built on a foundation of deliberate pacifism. It was a paradox that shattered their understanding of power. What do you require? Asked a slender avian representative. To be left in peace, Jin said. To learn. To grow. The field has marked a boundary. Respect it. Do not send probes. Do not send warships. Do not attempt to force contact. You may listen to our open broadcasts. You may study us from a distance, as we have studied the stars. But you may not interfere. And if we do? The Trilaxian asked, though it already knew the answer. Jin's expression was grave. Then you will learn the same lesson the Vexler learned. The system is patient, and its responses are absolute. It does not negotiate. It enforces the rules of the garden. The communication ended not with threats or treaties, but with a quiet acknowledgement. The message was sent across the galaxy. Earth was not to be classified as a primitive world, or a protected zone. A new category was created, custodial world, a place where the universe itself was the teacher, and humanity was the student body. Years later, Min and Hannah walked outside their mountain facility. It was a clear, cold night. The stars were brilliant pinpricks in the black velvet sky. They knew that among those stars, sensors and telescopes were now trained on Earth, not with greed, but with a reverence bordering on fear. Hannah pointed to a particularly bright star. Do you think they're watching us right now? Min shoved his hands in his pockets. Oh, I'm sure they are. But they're watching the way you watch a sleeping dragon, with great respect and from a very, very safe distance. He looked up at the vast expanse. The silence was no longer the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of a held breath, of a galaxy that had just discovered a sign it had missed for eons. A sign that said, in the oldest language of all, do not disturb. Humanity's great work was no longer about reaching out to claim the stars. It was about looking inward, understanding the incredible legacy they inhabited. Their purpose was not conquest, but comprehension. They were the keepers of a mystery, and their greatest contribution to the galactic community would not be technology or war, but a simple, enduring lesson that true strength sometimes looks like weakness, and that the most powerful force in the universe might not be the will to dominate, but the patience to learn. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the sky. It flared for a moment, then vanished. Min wondered if it was just a bit of space rock, or something else, a probe from a curious species, testing the boundary. Whatever it was, it had not touched the atmosphere. The night remained peaceful, and the Earth, in all its seeming fragility, turned safely through the dark, wrapped in a lesson too vast for anyone to ever dare strike it again.